Hello! Another week rolls by, and here we are with familiar people doing the familiar, but in an unfamiliar environment that is trying to solve the world's problems and talking about things that we have no business talking about. You really shouldn't be taking us seriously because we don't know what we're talking about. But here we are at Jamtree in Mount Pleasant, courtesy of Matt and his team that are hosting us today. They've put on a lovely platter. I believe, Chris, you've got instructions to make sure our glasses are never empty.
Yeah, for sure.
And if our glasses do become empty or if they develop a leak, I will be having some serious discussions with Matt.
Yeah, for sure. Don't worry. I'll guide you guys.
So what have you got for us today?
So I'm going to make you some two Asian meal and then one mojito.
2 Asian meals.
Yeah. Sugar-free.
Sugar-free? But they've got alcohol, right?
They've got alcohol, definitely.
And he's having?
Mojito, non-alcoholic. I don't know if it's okay with
a virgin mojito.
Virgin one.
You can put a drop.
A drop. Is that a good idea?
It's a very bad idea. We'll
But
end
it
up
would
in
be okay, though. You don't have
hospital.
to
We'll
be
end up
worried.
in hospital. Let me just warn you. And the
God.
bill will be on you. So
I can pay, don't worry. You help me out, don't worry.
Anyway, do your thing.
Okay, sir. Don't worry, I got you guys.
You guys have had a good week?
I've got a flu, but otherwise I'm fine.
in summer, what's wrong?
No, it's just, I think in summer it's generally quite warm. But on some days it rains and it's cool and you don't actually anticipate it. And you get cold and you pick up a flu.
So your mum was right, eh? You'll catch a cold.
Absolutely.
If you get wet. And you're dressed normally?
Yeah, Farai's dad passed on this. Yeah, the Farai that we know. So yeah, it was a sad week. Yeah, at a funeral, but it was a sad week. But cheers to a good life lived. And yeah.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah, that is that.
But so this week we commemorate Black Friday, 13th of November 1997. A day that I think means a lot to our generation. Having the adolescents, teenagers in the 90s, a period when the economy was doing well and was so full of hope. But just as we were on the brink of leaving high school and entering this hopeful world, this disastrous thing happened and our hopes were dashed.
That sounds quite dramatic, but yeah, it is a day that lives in infamy.
But maybe for the benefit of the more youthful viewers, could you recount what happened and why it's an important day?
I think it's an important day for markets, more for markets and less for everyday people. But you're quite right. I think it had a big impact on markets because the Zimbabwean dollar lost 75% of its value. It then recovered after that, but I think on that particular day, it lost 75% of its value. And that is quite, not 75% depreciation, which was quite dramatic because since 1980, it hadn't lost as much as it did in one single day.
So just for simplicity, this is like the rate moving from 800 to 1,400
Yes,
in one trading session over 8 hours.
over 8 hours. Yeah.
Wow.
So it was dramatic, but for financial markets. And I make this point because we need to highlight certain things. Like for everyday life, I think that people continued as this. It's not like the price of bread increased on that particular day. It then, the effect I always felt, it lags behind. The effects are probably maybe 6 months to a year. In fact, when the food riots, we only started seeing the food riots a year later.
Yeah,
but on that particular day,
6 months or so later.
yeah. And the real reason why the Zim dollar crashed, I know a lot of people have their own ideas around Wolvet's payments. I don't think that was what precipitated the crash. What precipitated the crash is we got wound of the news, or financial markets got wound of the news that our import cover had dropped and deteriorated from 6 months cover to 2 months cover. And that set the panic.
No, but why was it so sudden? I mean,
So what tends to happen is we get this data once a month, right? And in Zimbabwe, we get this data probably once every quarter, right? Our import cover. In fact, if you want to go down that road, the impact of that data is post 1997. We never published that data, what our import cover is. But, and if you read the history, and it usually used to come out in the Financial Gazette. So this information, the market was now aware that our import cover had drastically fallen.
then how had it fallen so much in such a short space of time?
So
Between
because-
reports, how did it fall from 6 to 2?
The biggest budget deficit in Zimbabwe then was actually in 1996. To be fair, there had been a drought in 1996. There were elections in 1995, right? 1995 election, and then 1996 you have a drought. So one of our largest budget deficits was actually in 1996. So because you have a budget deficit in 1996, it means that you are importing grain, you are funding your deficit by printing, and that is what then caused the depletion of our import cover. So I want to highlight something that's very clear, and just to simplify matters, that it's for financial markets, it's just that straightforward and simple. It wasn't the Wolvert which is looking forward. The market was discounting what had happened.
But the Wolverts payment had just happened. How could that be irrelevant?
It was the announcement of the Wolvert.
Oh, the Wolverts payment, yes.
Yeah, the payment actually then happened in December, despite what had happened in November.
Wait, so
Right.
talk about the Wolverts payment. Can you just talk about that?
So we then had an unbudgeted amount. If you remember at the time, I think
3 billion Zim dollars?
I think it's fair to put it in percentage.
Okay.
So in percentage terms, it would increase our deficit by more than 5% budget deficit. Oh, that looks lovely.
Thank you very much,
Yeah,
sir.
looks very
Nana,
pretty.
mojito for you, sir.
Yeah.
Are you sure there's no alcohol in there?
100%
It looks like a real mojito. Actually,
Yeah,
no,
I
drinks
don't,
mixed
I
up-
don't, I don't
mixed
even
up.
know how alcohol tastes. So,
Are you
if
sure you
there
don't
is
have
alcohol,
If there is alcohol in there, you probably can't taste it.
I can't taste it because
Yeah.
I don't even know what alcohol.
And then for the
alcohol
Asian
is,
meals?
huh?
Why is it called an Asian meal?
It's all about the spicy taste. So go ahead and taste
What's in it?
There's Whitley raspberry, Whitley lemongrass, dead man's finger, coconut.
Dead man's finger, that's rum.
Yeah, that's rum.
Rum is like pure sugar, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, it's made from cane.
Anyway, Chris, cheers to you.
Cheers.
Yeah,
guys.
cheers.
Cheers,
Quite
cheers,
good.
cheers.
I'm not sure why you're making us drink pink drinks, but it will do. Thank you very much. It's
Is it
actually quite
okay
nice.
with you guys?
Yep, it's
Yeah.
quite good.
It's a bit on the sweet side, but it's nice. Are you sure there's no sugar?
There's no sugar. Sugar.
Thank you, Chris.
We'll
Cheers,
take you
guys.
at your word.
And then
Cheers.
your mojito, say?
It's fantastic. Sour, savory.
But there's one shot rum in there.
Oh my God.
But
You're taking me to
don't
hospital.
worry. You'll be fine, don't worry.
Anyway, yes. So where did we get to?
So it increased the budget deficit. For the end of the year, it would have been about 11%. And I think the minister at the time wanted to
let me-
push.
We were panicking over an 11% budget deficit. Anyway, carry on. Carry on.
Yeah, it would
How times have
increase
changed,
the government because it was unbudgeted. So, and let's make this very clear, because I know that there's a lot of politics around the Wolvert payments. The Wolvert payments did not cause the crash. What caused the crash is our import cover was already depleted, but also it was unbudgeted. So what they could have done is to just push it to the next year. But unfortunately, those payments were then made in December.
Weren't we in a position
was
to
unbudgeted.
raise money in global capital markets at that time?
We were already running a deficit. Remember?
No, we
in
were running a
1996
deficit, but I'm talking about
Couldn't go borrow.
capital.
No, we couldn't, because by 1997,
We were already in arrears.
that's the IMF actually stopped the balance of payment
Support.
support.
Because we were not sticking to the program.
Yeah. remember the payments themselves. It's just that they came in December. I mean, if we're being honest enough, I don't think it had a major impact on our economy. Then it had a major impact in 1998, but not in 1997. Because you've been running the entire year, 12 months, and then you make, admittedly, this huge payment in December. But to think that December obliterates everything that had happened in the year, I don't think it's quite correct. I think we had fundamental problems, and this just added to the problems. But it's a nice story to talk about that it was the COVID payments. But no, we had been running a budget deficit in 1996, the widest budget deficit we've ever had since 1990.
But wait a minute.
1980.
How is the 96 budget deficit the worst we've ever had, and yet 96 is post-ESA?
That's actually fantastic.
So it's post-ESA, so we've stopped subsidizing, we've restructured the economy. How does the deficit widen?
That's a fantastic question, George. It was an unwilling government. So when you look at the restructuring that happened, it happened more so with capital markets. It happened in the private sector, but not so much in government, right? And by 1995, by the election 1995, the government had, all intents and purposes, given up on ESA. It had given up on it. So that's why in 1996...
It's a bit like starting to take your medication, then stopping. The disease comes back worse.
It is worse. And that's why in 1996, you're quite right. That's a good analogy. Because actually the deficit was highest in 1996, and yet the drought was less than the 1991 drought.
Yeah, I also get the sense that when you think about these prescriptions from the World Bank and IMF, and you look at the government of the day at the time, philosophically, they believed in command, they had an affinity for socialism. They never really bought into ESA. I think that, we needed to borrow, we needed the balance of payment support, so we signed onto it, but we never believed in it.
No, but wait, how do you guys say they didn't believe in it? I mean, how do you embark on a program you don't believe in? And what are the results going to be?
Well, we know what the results are.
So, I mean, this is like you deciding...
It's like judicial management. Most people don't get into judicial management because they want to.
But once they're in, they follow it, right?
Well, not
they don't
necessarily.
have power.
They don't.
Oh, that's true.
But governments do have the power.
But getting into a program that you don't believe in is like you sort of deciding that, I'm going to grow some maize this summer, but I don't think I should be growing some maize. So sometimes you're going to go to the farm, sometimes you're going to buy fertilizer, sometimes you're not. Well, how do you think this is going to end up?
So the big, the bright shiny object with ISAP was, we're going to write you a check, and you're excited about getting this check. You're not excited with all the strings attached to getting this check. So
I get that, Rafael, but like, let's go back to growing maize example, right? If you said, I'm not going to grow maize, you know you're going to be hungry, but at least you have money. If you then say, I'm going to grow maize and do it properly, you won't have money, but you'll have maize. But if you say, well, I'm going to sort of half do it, you're going to be worse than being in one of the two extremes.
Okay. So I like the example and the way you've presented it, and I think one of the differences between individuals acting in their own interest economically and governments is that you, the individual, have skin in the game. So if you make decisions that don't work out, you actually suffer the consequences. But if you are sitting in a comfortable air-conditioned office in a government building and your policy doesn't work, it doesn't really affect your life.
And you think those bureaucrats are better off today than they were then in their personal lives?
Well, a lot of them...
they got farms.
A lot of them have been...
not as a result of ISAP. I mean, that's another story.
Look at it from this perspective. How many of them got fired because ISAP didn't deliver the results that were promised? How many of them were able to maintain their jobs for decades after ISAP, notwithstanding that the average Zimbabwean got poorer?
Some of them still have their jobs today.
So that's the thing. And this is not peculiar to Zimbabwe. This is true for governments all over the world. generally bureaucrats don't have skin in the game. They don't get punished directly for decisions that they make that don't work out.
Okay. So he says I was being dramatic, but I was saying our lives changed dramatically because of Black Friday. And you sort of painted the story of how we got to Black Friday. Why would our lives have changed dramatically because of it? And why would some of the impact still be being felt today? Or how is it being felt today?
So philosophically, running with the theme my good friend Rufaro started with is we sort of did away with orthodox economics. So I think philosophically,
What some have referred to as bookish
economics. I think
So you think that's a moment?
that's the moment. So the real problem is the depreciation. Let's be very clear. South Africa went through a depreciation of its kind of, under Thabo Mbeki, I think it was in 2001, which was really bad, right?
But it wasn't this dramatic.
It was so dramatic.
Not 75% in 8
No,
hours.
it wasn't. But then for the economy, for the size of the economy, it was really bad. And they had a commission of inquiry.
Into what caused it.
What actually caused it. And it came out, you know what? This was the after effect of the Asian crisis. People forget this. That in 1998, you actually had an Asian currency crisis. Yeah. And part of it is...
And it affected frontier and emerging market
It did affect
currencies.
us. It did affect us. But I think that philosophically what changed is we then did away with any orthodoxy in our economics. So anything that sounded orthodox, we did away with it. That's the moment. And I think that's the fundamental problem. So currency depreciation by itself, there is absolutely nothing wrong with it. It's just the market.
There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with your currency losing 75% in a day.
It's like your body overheating.
Is there nothing wrong with having a fever?
There's actually nothing wrong with having a fever. In fact, if you're still having a fever, you're alive.
Tinashe.
This was not medical advice.
Thankfully, he's not my doctor.
A dead man doesn't have a fever.
No,
but you get what I'm trying to say. It's a correction.
But Tinashe, but there were consequences, right?
The bigger consequences
capital
was more
flight.
philosophical.
There was capital flight. We pulled back from currency reforms, from the liberalization of the market.
That's what I'm saying, that it was more philosophical. The impact of it was more philosophical. It even justified why you would pay the war vets. Because then there was no one saying, but it's actually bad for our economy. It's like, well, we don't care. Whereas in South Africa, they did have a commission of inquiry. At the time, if you remember very well, Thabo Mbeki actually thought it was Tokyo Seswale and I forget the other political figure, that they had caused the currency run. And then they had a commission of inquiry and it came back that actually, no, this is the reality. Russia had gone through the same. All the Asian markets had gone through the same.
Okay, but I think you're being too philosophical about it. Or maybe too broad. Mm-hmm. I mean, in reality, our lives changed. Why? Post that date, soon after that date, we went into high inflation, which became hyperinflation. We pulled back on a lot of structural reforms we'd embarked on, especially reforms to do with the currency. And so, remember, leading up to 1997, we'd seen the currency starting to get liberalized. We'd seen the falling away of import licenses.
So you know what the funny thing is? Our highest FDI or highest investment actually happened in 1997, the year that you think.
But because all these reforms had happened.
Yes, and also we had Harrison Chambati now coming through as finance minister.
For about 2 minutes.
And the point I'm trying to make is that philosophically, the minute you say economics, the minute you start venturing in an unorthodox economics, that's the end. Right? So it's like, you get a fever and you go to
another medical analogy.
Because he's totally qualified for medical analogies.
I know a lot of people who, for whatever reason, let's say your doctor gets it wrong, then they decide to do away with orthodox medicine. No, orthodox medicine, and they start venturing in
alternatives,
crystals and all sorts. The point is, you can't then say the problem is what they then eventually did, well, they veered off. The minute they veered off from orthodoxy, that was the end. And that's all I'm saying, that the most fundamental thing about Black Friday is that's when we veered off from orthodox economics. And when we veered off from orthodox economics, that's why in December of the same year, we then paid Woolworths. But if we had gone with orthodox economics, we could have said, you know what, Woolworths, we're going to delay the payment by a month. Do you know that it would have made all the difference?
You could have actually not delayed it by a month. You could have said, you know what, we're not going to give you a lump sum.
We're going to spread it out.
We're going to give you a pension.
There you go.
And the impact
Well,
would have been,
they were given a lump sum and a pension. But it was perfectly fine. As long as it was within the budget for the next year, we would have
juggled things around.
But the problem is we did away with orthodox economics.
So in a way,
and that's a challenge, and I think it's still true today, because economics sounds intuitive when people discuss it. It sounds, because everybody deals with money in their day-to-day lives. They probably have borrowed at some stage, so they've got some sense for interest rates, for inflation. So it seems intuitive, and it seems like you can sit around the table with smart, committed people and innovate and figure things out and do them differently. But there's been like 300 years of economic theory and people actually applying their minds in a very disciplined and structured way to understanding what works and what doesn't work. And I think one of the problems that we had then, and we still have today, is that there's this dismissal of this orthodoxy, of all this hard work from Adam Smith, right, to this day. And you have people who think that they can figure it out and they can innovate. And Zim is a special case. The rules
some sort of
the rules are different.
Well, you know what? I think you guys are all right. And taking from what you're saying, what I take from what you're saying is it was the start of a slippery slope. And I've often said this. I mean, we've had this discussion many times, and I think I've said this quite a few times to you. Every time we've had a new finance minister or a new governor of the central bank, I think when you take up one of those jobs, you've got to be careful the first time you're asked to do something, because the politicians will always ask. It's their job to ask. The human needs and wants are unlimited, and they represent human needs and wants. And they come to you as a technocrat and they say, can you do this for us? The day you say, I'll make a plan, when you make the first plan, you're on a very dangerous road. And you must make a second plan.
You opened yourself to more and more demands.
So I look at it a bit differently. I don't think we started off on, we got onto the slippery slope in 1997. I actually think we got onto that slippery slope in 1980. It's just that the economy was much better then. It was much more robust. So whatever damage we did to it in 1980 took years and years to manifest. And, so when you start seeing that devaluation in 1997,
but the point is, the point
philosophically,
the point is
1997 was what we veered off. Because before, yes, the problems were there.
But we had high inflation, we had deficits.
No, so what had happened, Rufaro, is medical analogy. From 1980 to 1990.
Because you're a qualified doctor.
Yes. Well, I've been seriously ill recently, so I think I'm more qualified than you. So from 1980 to 1990, we behaved badly, in large part because we didn't know better. Then we got really sick. And we actually went to people that knew better and said, guys,
we need a check.
And they said to us, you need to make these changes. And from 1990 to 1995, we were changing our life, getting back on the correct path. And if Tinashe is to be believed, somewhere around 95, 96, we didn't fall off the wagon, we leapt off it. And then the rest followed.
We borrowed, in 1996, in US dollar terms, we borrowed $3 billion.
$3 billion?
Yeah.
Like the equivalent of today's national budget?
Yeah.
What did you do with the money?
Drought, elections.
No, I mean, what? Okay, the whole country needs 2 million tons of maize to survive. Right? 2 million tons of maize is what? Is at best $200 million, right?
No.
300 or $400 million.
$400 million.
So what did we do with the other 2.6 billion? How?
But your analogy plays to it, right? It's like an alcoholic who relapses.
So you've got to pick that one, right?
Yeah, it's like you've gone for, 2 years without a drop of alcohol, and then one thing happens, and then
Somebody
you
puts
relapse,
you in
and
charge
then
of the bar.
you start compensating for the last 2 years. It's probably problematic, more problematic than if you had just
Continued having a beer a day.
Exactly.
I think at this point we must take a break. We need to powder our noses. Tinashe needs to say hello to some old friends. And we'll be right back. And we're back. Did you make the acquaintance of some old friends?
Yes, I did. It's a very nice place, I must say.
Okay. And nice people?
Very, very, very well dressed as well.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I won't ask anymore. So
I can see why Rufaro comes here often.
No comment.
Why do you come here all the Anyway, so it's been an interesting week. A lot of developments in the economy, as usual. And for those of us who earn Zim dollars and have to swipe for most of our purchases, we have for the past several weeks been swiping at rates between 700, 750. And all of a sudden we're finding ourselves being asked to swipe at 800, 900. What's going on?
Printing, in a word. I don't know whether you've got a different angle.
No, please continue.
Do you get the sense the rate has moved?
Yeah, I do. You see, I think we took a lot of policy action that not only succeeded in arresting the movement of the rate, it actually pulled it back. But like a lot of the policy action in Zim, it deals with symptoms and not the underlying issues. So increasing interest rates, slowing down payments to government contractors, yeah, that certainly constricted Zim dollar liquidity. But you can only do that for so long. And as long as you're running a deficit and you're funding it by printing, eventually it's going to manifest in the rate. And that's what's happening, I think. I could be wrong.
Are we? So if you can print, okay, he doesn't like this argument, but you can print. If your printing is commensurate with growth in economic activity, you won't have a big impact on the rate. So if we're seeing this movement in the rate, are we saying there's been a slowdown or we are out printing the growth?
We're always out printing. If you look at
so there is growth?
No, we're always out printing growth.
Yes, but is there growth?
No, I don't think there's any growth at all. In September, the month-on-month ZWL printing was 19% increase.
In money supply.
Is this ZWL alone, or are you including?
No, I think ZWL.
You're not including
the US
FCA's
the FCA's. It was actually month-on-month. Then it gets to 192%. Purely because of revaluation. And I think that's the point, that there is this argument in Zimbabwe that somehow M3 is not money and only reserve money is money. that we should be worried about.
No,
Well, there's
what
only
is
one
this
institution
argument?
that
Like,
likes
there's
this
about
argument.
6 people in the whole country who understand what reserve money and M3 is. So who's having this argument? You and the governor, and who else are having this argument?
Okay, all right. So let's not have this argument. But you know, M3 has been increasing, and if you look at the graph, it's actually quite stiff from July. You can see that it actually gets really stiff, and part of it is the currency depreciation, the official currency depreciation, and part of it is actually money printing, and it comes in many ways. So if you look at the wheat farmers, for example, we printed money to pay for their inputs and everything, right? Now they've produced,
No, we haven't paid them.
and we cannot pay them. And the reason why we cannot pay them is because they produced, if we're to believe, even if we don't believe that they have 12-month cover of wheat.
No, we've got a number.
Yeah.
GMB this week said they've received 120,000 tons.
Okay, how much cover in months is that?
That's probably 3 or 4 months.
4 months. The point is,
We
there's no
paid. We
miller.
paid for 500,000.
That's the problem. So you're saying there's a gap?
Well, okay. Can I talk about agriculture?
Yeah, please. Okay, go ahead. Please explain this.
Okay,
Because
so if you
this would be a bigger problem than I expected.
So if you speak to any seasoned agronomist in this country, they will tell you that the last date for putting down wheat is May 15. Why is May 15 the last date for putting down wheat? Because the earliest date for your rains is late September. So if you sort of count 4 months, mid-May, mid-June, mid-July, mid-August, mid-September, that's 4 months for your wheat to mature, dry, and for you to get out. After that, you are at God's mercy in terms of the rain. Because
Okay.
what happens when a seed gets wet?
It germinates.
So if your wheat is in the munda and it rains, it germinates. We must also bear in mind that we've got a limited number of combine harvesters because it doesn't make sense for every farmer to have a combine harvester. So you must plant your wheat taking into account that you're going to wait your turn for the combine harvester to come and take your wheat out. What happened this year, we had a long wet season, which went into April. So the maize didn't dry early enough. And it couldn't be combined out. So the maize was ready, but it couldn't be combined out because it kept raining, it stayed moist. So a lot of the maize was still being combined late May, even into June. And some farmers, because they were on command and they'd been given the inputs and they had to use them, still went and planted their wheat. We then count that hectareage towards our forecast of
Right.
480,
Is that what
500,000
happened?
ton yield of wheat. So,
Double counted.
well, not necessarily double counted. We counted it, but we counted chickens that hadn't hatched. So, we'll never know whether enough wheat was planted to get 500,000 tons. But giving the government the benefit of the doubt, it probably was. But it then got wet. On my way to Mrewa, where I go every weekend, there's a particular farm I passed in Arcturus that's got what I estimate to be a 20 or 25 hectare crop circle that's got wheat in it. They managed to harvest a quarter of the crop circle. Then the rain came. So of the 20 hectares, 14, 15 hectares
So the
have
GMB
gone to
numbers.
waste.
So please explain the GMB numbers because that's now what's actually in our silos.
120,000.
Okay, what are we expecting in your estimate?
We're done. Where do you think the wheat is sitting? Do you think the wheat has just been sitting in the
We were expecting 500,000. We're only getting
But
120.
I just told you, this guy had 20 hectares. He maybe managed to harvest 6 or 7.
Because we paid for 500,000.
Yes. And if you go to his farm, he will show you the wheat. It's there. And
Except it's not useful.
we can make cattle feed from it.
Wow. So it's a double jeopardy.
But does it make sense for us to grow wheat in this part of the world, given the, our winter is relatively warm compared to Ukraine?
No,
and
the
world's major wheat
technology has
producers?
moved forward and the genetics have moved forward. We can. There's wheat that can grow in warmer climates. Yes, we'll never be as great as Ukraine at doing it, but we'll grow wheat. And we probably, can be sufficient to some extent. But there's certain things that you can't cheat. If it rains and your wheat is dry, it will germinate. And it's no good for anything other than feeding cows once it's germinated. So because we've got a short winter, if we're going to grow wheat, we've got to make sure that that wheat is in the ground on time. But unfortunately, because we try and intercrop it, or whatever the word is, crop it with maize, if the maize takes longer to get out of the munda, you can't get the wheat in. Ideally, you should be rotating it with soyas, because the soyas come out earlier in January. They can be out as early as January, February.
So 20 years after land reform, we haven't figured this out?
No, we knew this before land reform.
Yeah. What I'm saying is,
It's just that it's a very costly exercise. This has been a very costly experiment. And I think it explains why, if you look at the auction, we're only distributing about 11, 13 million now from the highs of 45 million a week.
So where's the rest of the money going internationally?
Because they're using it for government's own requirements. That's the only conclusion that we can come up with.
Maybe we're building reserves. Because we know we are taking 40 or 50 million from exporters every week, right?
Yeah, we know that.
And then we give 11 to importers.
Where's the rest?
Where's the other 20 or 30
and we still have a backlog.
30 or 40
maybe
Remember,
we're buying
and we
gold
still have
coins.
No, we sold 10,000. It's not much.
And we still have a backlog.
So where's the money going?
Government creditors. And
Is this a
all
fact?
sorts- Well, we can
We're
only
speculating.
speculate
Yeah,
at this
I'm
point.
sure we're
We can only
speculating.
speculate, but it's an obvious question because we know that our exports have actually increased.
But why do you rule out that we're building reserves?
Because we would see that in the numbers. And when we look
And
at
the
the
rate.
numbers, we would see
Well,
that.
the reserves, you wouldn't see it in the rate.
No, we would see it in our numbers. And in our numbers, when you look at reserves, we actually have, we barely have reserves. I think a lot of the currency is with deposit picking corporates. Those are the financial institutions. And actual US dollars, they've got about $1 billion. But it's a 2 billion FCAs, Nostros. We've got 2 billion Nostros, and billion is hardcore cash.
So what does that mean?
It means that 50% of our money is just purely deposits. It's not backed by hardcore US dollar cash.
Are you sure?
Yeah, you can see that. We can see that in the September numbers.
Are you including the
Everything.
Nostro that's offshore? Are you
Everything.
including the Nostro that's sitting at Reserve Bank?
Yeah. So cash, actual cash, we've got about 400 million actual US dollar cash. USD,
Sitting in bank vaults.
bank vaults, RBZ,
And 600
Actual.
million is sitting where?
and 600 million is sitting with offshore banks. So you can consider that as hardcore US dollar cash.
This is interesting.
And then another $1 billion are credit deposits. These are banks that have created these deposits, but they're not
But
backed
I don't like it when people word it like that. I mean, people make it seem as if people sat in a big meeting of bankers and said, let's create deposits. It's just a function of banking, right?
Yeah, no, it is a function of banking.
That money,
but
money
you
grows.
also have legacy debts in there, legacy debt TBs,
Okay.
right? So they're sitting with the bank, and the bank has
Counting it as cash
as cash.
because it's near cash.
Exactly.
How much are the legacy debt TBs?
We don't know, but we know that they're floating around. I can't from the numbers. If somebody can,
So
but from the numbers, I
so,
can't
so
tell, but we
you
know
are
that-
owed money. You or your creditor is owed money by the government. The government gives you a TB and says
in US dollars.
We'll make good.
In 2 years, I think
2
there's
years,
2 years and 8 years and 10 years. I've seen those.
So you
times.
take this TB and you take it to a financial institution, and the financial institution buys it from you and gives you US dollars. So the government says, I'll pay you $100 in 3 years. The financial institution says, okay, thank you very much. I'll give you $90 for this, and I'll put this in the vault.
and they count that as a deposit.
It's not quite a deposit. I used to fill in these things.
Yeah.
It's got its own line, but it's
Yeah.
near cash.
Yeah.
They count it as near cash. But there's actually no cash in the vault.
Exactly. But we
What
don't know
could
the
go
extent.
Why don't we know the extent?
Well, I suppose we have to ask the right questions, but I don't think.
Is
we're
it
gonna
not
get
in the
answers.
reports?
In the reports, you know what? I'm perhaps it's beyond me. Perhaps there's somebody out there who can read through the reports and dissect it the way George wants it. But when I look at
The way I
reports-
want it.
well, it's a very important way of looking at it. But from the reports that I see, from the monthly reports, we know what notes and coins, US dollars, we know what that amount is. They tell us, and we know the amount of that we're holding as nostrils that are offshore. So that I can tell you, but it might be somewhere in there.
You were saying
I'm not
something.
discounting
Sir.
it.
No, I was asking the question with these nostril credit balances, what could go wrong? You know, you saw the story in the news this week about FTX and their tokens and the spectacular collapse of this crypto institution.
You want to tell us more?
Well, there's this crypto exchange called FTX that basically was running a Ponzi scheme in short, and it collapsed in spectacular fashion this week. So for those who are crypto enthusiasts, I think it's raised some questions about the future of crypto.
So basically, this was like a bank.
I think that's the
This
problem.
was like
It
a bank of
centralized.
It was an exchange. It wasn't a bank.
It wasn't a bank.
Like a bank for people
But
to understand.
it acted like a bank. Because what ended up
It acted
happening-
like a custodian, not a bank.
Okay.
No, because it was actually leveraging.
Can you simplify it for people? So for
It
everyone else,
acted
it acted like a bank.
It actually
They put
acted
their
like a
crypto
bank.
there and they thought it was there.
Yes.
And
Just
they
like
were
people put
using,
their money in a bank and they think
and
it's
they were
safe.
using those deposits for their own personal benefit, for their own personal positions, because they were funding a hedge fund that they owned, and the same hedge fund would then eventually, put money on the exchange as well. And so, yeah, it was a Ponzi scheme, if you think about it. But I think that it goes against the whole idea of what crypto was set out to do, which is decentralized finance, right?
Decentralized.
Decentralized finance and not centralized. And then what you had with FTX was actually centralized financing. And I think that's problematic. And I think it's actually good for crypto. There are two things that are important with what's happening, which I think are.
Okay, I'm going to allow you one more minute of this rabbit hole.
Okay. So the first thing is the high leveraging that we saw in cryptos will go away. Well, at least will be toned down, I believe. And you get serious investors, because I think a lot of people were just jumping in because of all these promises of no risk. I mean, literally, the hedge fund would issue out a statement and say, you know what, invest in us, 15% annualized at zero risk. I mean, even gold has risk.
Yeah.
So if you think about it,
so if anybody tells you that there's an investment opportunity with no risk, it's a scam.
It
Of
is
course,
a scam.
because by
Yeah.
the definition of profit
course.
is reward for taking risk.
exactly.
There can
So-
be no investment with no risk.
But it also then explains how crypto or how Bitcoin then got to the highs of 60, because a lot of it was just leverage,
Okay.
right? So, and then the second thing is decentralized. It
Oh,
must
you still
be,
have a second thing.
Yeah, I know.
But
It must
this
be
is a rabbit hole.
decentralized.
I'll give you a minute.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
And anyway, we need to take a break. Young Patrick, who's standing in for Ranga today, is hopping up and down. If he had any hair, he'd be losing it by now.
He's much more agreeable than Ranga, by the way.
So we're going to go away for a couple of minutes, and we'll be right back. And we'll be back with a surprise.
She's the baddest of them all. The baddest of them all. She's the baddest of them all. The baddest of them all. She's the baddest of them all. The baddest of them all. Do you wanna dance, baby?
And we're back, getting serenaded. Well, I'm not sure how I feel about this romantic music. These two bozos on either side of me.
Maybe you have a crush on me.
Or maybe he does.
No, you.
No. During the break, we came across. Okay, now don't judge me. I cannot do clicks, so I will attempt it, and then he will correct me. Silent no.
Close.
What's the correct way to say it?
Silent no. No. Yeah. No.
Who is one of the most talented guitarists in Zim. I know this because a few years ago I watched you playing at Hi-Fi
Yeah.
with some very talented international musicians.
Yeah.
And, you did a
Thank
fantastic
you.
job.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I believe you're now spending a lot of time at Jamtree.
Yeah. I am the face of that.
Couldn't pick a better one.
But yeah, I've been
just in time.
working. Yeah, I've been
My glass
working with
was leaking.
Jamtree for a minute.
Chris,
Oh,
you're,
nice.
you're doing
Yeah.
God's work.
And how long have you been doing this for?
What music?
Yeah, music.
Professionally since I was 14, but learning music and stuff from when I was 9.
Wow.
Yeah, just different instruments.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you never used to sing, right?
No,
which is why
no.
you were called Silent.
No, Silence is my actual name.
Serious?
Yeah, it's my actual name.
No way.
Yeah, it's my. I didn't cry at birth. That's why they named me Silent.
Oh.
It's ironic.
But like when I saw you performing back then, you didn't sing.
No, I only started singing in 2017. Like
Right.
that's when I got into that because I've taught myself everything I know musically, including the instruments I play. And one thing I really wanted to do was sing because I wrote poems before. So I started turning my poems into songs and learning how to sing. I'm still learning actually. Yeah.
And I believe you've got an album out.
I've got an album out, Silent Treatment. It's out online. Which camera am I looking at?
Look at that one there.
This one, yeah.
Yeah.
done.
Silent Treatment, out now. SYLENT Treatment. Check it out.
Where'd you find it?
It's everywhere. It's on all digital stores. Yeah.
Apple?
YouTube as well. Yeah, Apple, Spotify. Yeah.
Are you gonna give us a little something from there?
Yeah.
But before you do, because Rufaro just loves this bit of the show of getting
Right.
to explain the alcohol. So you ordered something from
Yep.
Chris.
I did. It's a whiskey sour, minus the syrup. So it's Panting friendly. And the cherries. The cherries are really very sugary as well. So it's minus the cherry. I noticed when he was making it, he didn't have any egg white. And this is normal in this part of the world. They generally skimp.
So it's not a whiskey sour. It's something else.
They generally skimp on the egg white. But this is, I have this, I'm not going to say how often here. But you've just said how often. But it's quite good.
This is better than the one you attempted to make on the show.
I beg to differ. But anyway, we'll be generous to Matt and say that.
Anyway, he's silent.
George asked earlier to dedicate a song to his wife. So this one is called Umuhle. It's called Umuhle, and it's song 8 on my album. So enjoy.
Well, yeah. Well, yeah. Even in the rain, you look amazing. And spending life with you is just a blessing. You're the wildest dream I won't stop chasing. So don't you shy away from my confession. Won't you come on over? Meet me at the altar. I'm no Casanova, yeah. I just wanna hold ya. You're not like any other. You're not like any other. You're not like any other. Umuhle, Hey wena ntombi, umuhle, umuhle. Hey wena ntombi, umuhle, umuhle. Hey wena ntombi, umuhle, umuhle. Hey wena ntombi, ngaphakathi ngaphandle. Ngaphakathi ngaphandle, yeah, 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 yeah. Ta rioto, ta rioto, taruwa, taruto, taruwa, taruto, oh yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah.
There we go.
Oh, that's awesome, man.
Fantastic.
Awesome,
Yeah,
awesome.
well done. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Oh, wow.
So that's Umuche. It's part of the album, and yeah,
I
you
even
guys
fell
should check
in
it
love,
out.
you know, just
With
listen
him?
to the song. Well, not with him, but just the idea
fell in love
of
with
love.
me?
No, with the idea of love.
You're saying no too enthusiastically.
But Silent, so you came bearing gifts.
Yeah.
Krabby. Apparently, we're not going to taste it this week, but
It's for the show next week. It's for the show next week. Yeah.
You're the whiskey buff.
Yeah. So be sure to tune in to next week's show where I unpack
Yeah.
White Krabby. Is a good one.
Yeah. I wouldn't know. I do not drink alcohol, but
Well, so you actually forgot about me, and
nobody
I'll
cares
deal
about
with you later. Remember, you fell in love.
Nobody cares about you and your tea and your
We'll actually, no, we'll drink tea together, man. Yeah.
But anyway, Silent,
definitely.
it is customary that Snow Umbera.
Yeah,
Shumba and
Mazi.
Mazi.
The last people that did that were at home. It's surprising. Thank you so much for that. You know,
No, thank you very much.
yeah,
But so I mean, this is a pretty pricey bottle.
yeah.
So clearly the music's paying.
I mean, yeah, let me put the guitar down, then we talk about this. The music should pay, but it's not. Mainly because of the current situation, the economic situation of the country, first and foremost, and also just a bunch of other things that are surrounding the industry, and mainly just the economy. You know, that's what's messing us up, because we only make money at gigs. You know, we don't really make money from sales and stuff like that, you know. But there's
so
no
what would
gigs,
your
you know.
advice be to somebody who was actually starting out or
It's
who's
really,
thinking of getting in the industry?
yeah. You can get into any industry, but you have to have a plan. You have to have a plan, and you have to have some sort of backing as well, which is what every artist in the country is looking for, some sort of financial backing, because that's what pushes us. We need to record videos, we need to record the music, we need to go on tours and market. And this
You're
is all,
caressing George's banker's ego.
I'm not a banker anymore.
Well, you know what? There's
Yeah.
something that you may not know, and our audience may not know
Yeah.
about George. But George used to punt on musicians.
Yeah, I used to.
You know, sometime
Once upon a
back,
time.
Once upon a time, he used to fund a lot of musicians.
Well, not a lot.
how long
I'll
have
tell
you known me, George?
But let me tell you,
I've known
tell you why
you
he's
for
known
a couple
me.
of, days, but
Let me tell
but
you
I've
why-
known about you.
Sorry, before
For
you
years.
get your, he's known me for a long time, and he never funded me. We'll talk at the
No,
car
no,
park.
no,
just
but-
you and me.
no, but by the-
I'll tell
by
you
the
why
time I
he
met you,
stopped.
I
I'll
stopped.
tell you why he stopped, because
Yeah.
I think he's going to be politically correct, but I'm not, so I can
Yes,
say it.
being
But
Tinashe.
I want to know what you think about it.
Right.
Because this is why he stopped. He says, you know what, musicians are great, and it's a great business, but the problem is the musician is the problem.
He's a product.
Is the product. The musician himself or herself
Right, right.
is the product,
Uh-huh.
and you can't control the musician. You can't control the product. So you can't standardize it. You can't.
I can invest in a case of Krabby,
Right.
and if I tell it that you are going to sell for this price, you're going to sell it to this customer. It's
gonna behave.
It's going to behave.
Yeah.
When I invest in a musician, you turn your back,
How so?
and they're doing something else.
there's a potential Kanye in you. So I want to know what you think, because you know.
So,
that was
first
your-
and foremost, before you,
there's
I mean,
so
okay,
much in
let
it.
me tell you my story, right? So, made an album,
Right.
put in the money into the recording, everything fantastic.
Right.
So, okay, we put in money into the recording, right?
Right.
And I put the money. Who knows how to make music?
I do. Yeah. The artist.
Things finished, it's
Right.
polished.
Yeah.
It's now a thing to sell.
Right.
Who knows how to take it from here?
He does.
You do, and the marketing team.
And this is where our problems start.
Okay. How so?
This is what I want the cover to look like.
Right.
This is where I want to perform. This is the audience I want.
Right.
But because it's your
So you're saying
music,
the product has emotions,
it's
and
like
it can behave in a
it's like
erratic-
Ronaldo. It's like
I totally get
Ronaldo
what
this
you,
past week.
Yeah. I
He just
get
said
where
he's
you're
not going to
going.
play. What are you going to do?
I would say maybe it's a conversation you should have had with the artist before funding,
Okay.
so that you both know where you stand. Because it's business and then there's art. Do you understand? There's the money and then there's the actual commodity.
So he's
which
quite
is the art.
conscientious. So
Yeah.
for sure, he would have had that conversation.
Yeah,
And the person who would have been truant is the artist.
yeah. But as long as there's paperwork as well,
all of a sudden
it plays a big role.
Paperwork.
Yeah,
No, but you know what it comes down to?
yeah.
Sai, it's so we've got a gig. We're going to play it. Well, I'm not really feeling that venue. And now I must either force you onto the stage in a venue you're not feeling,
Right.
or be like, oh, okay, we're not going to play there.
But
Is that
do
true?
you
Is that
also
true?
understand that for me to perform on the stage, I need a certain PA system, I need a certain microphone, I need certain acoustics for the sound to come out the way it should. So it's a
Lauryn
it's a
Hill.
50-50.
Well, apparently,
50.
Lauryn Hill would
It's a
only
50.
play-
I am like that to an extent, where there's certain places where I need a certain PA system for that sound because of the acoustics of the place. But if it's just they don't want to perform, they're just probably lazy.
So do you know what I invest in now?
Yeah.
I invest in fruit trees.
In
Fruit trees.
fruit trees.
I dig a hole.
Uh-huh.
I put it
Talk
in.
back.
Yeah.
Doesn't talk back.
All right.
I come back after 5 years.
Yeah.
It's there.
Don't you want to work with one more musician then? Yeah.
I do fruit trees.
With a bit of Kanye in him.
and Lauryn Hill.
And Lauryn Hill. Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
I think
really
Silent,
appreciate you guys.
our audience our viewers would much rather have a couple more minutes with you
No,
and not
blessings.
listen to me whining
Yeah.
about musicians and comparing you to mangoes and oranges.
Kanye. Oh. Ooh. He's throwing shade, this guy.
So it's been lovely having you along. As usual, we don't know what we're talking about. We are just friends sharing a bit of tipper and trying to make sense of the world. Have a lovely weekend. Stay safe. Be good. If you can't be good at it.
Awesome.
It's all yours.
This one is called Let Me Love You. Enjoy. She say, don't hurt me, 'cause my heart's still aching. But I will trust you anyway. And I say, don't worry, 'cause you were made for me. And I will love you all the way. Here we are, exchanging vows, side by side. Yeah, we're sharing time. Oh, hey, I just wanna love you. You should let me love you. Oh, yeah. I just wanna love you. You should let me love you, love you.